Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, we're on the hunt for an absolute flop in Mel Brooks' 1968 film, The Producers.
Step one, we find the worst play in the world, a surefire flop.
Springtime for Hitler.
Step two, I raise $1 million. There are a lot of little old ladies in the world.
I love you.
What?
I love you.
What?
I love you!
Step three, you go back to work on the books. Only lists of backers, one for the government, one for us.
I I'll do it! You do it!
Step four, we open on Broadway. Step five, we close on Broadway.
Step six, we take $1 million and we fly to Rio de Janeiro.
We're still hanging with the movies and their remakes.
We
Andy.
are indeed.
Now we finished this whole Thomas Crown nonsense, and now we're into Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks.
Is this the first Mel Brooks film we've done?
This is. And why not start with his first film?
I think this is a good place to start. It's a
There
good
you
place to start. And okay. I know we need to talk about this movie and its place in history and all that stuff. But here's the thing. When we finished the show last week, you ended by telling me that this is not one of your favorite Mel Brooks movies.
I did say that.
I've been hurting since then.
Which is funny because you really had hardly ever seen this one. You've spent most of your time dabbling in the film version of the musical.
I know, and let me tell you why that is. Because of my family, these yahoos I live with who want the musical stuff. And what I'm telling you is I love this movie. I have a blast with this movie. I can't believe that I don't watch it more often. It's fantastic. And I'm watching it last night, and my kids pile in bed. It's a school night. I don't care. We're watching Max Bialystock. And they watched the last part of it with me, and we're in hysterics at this movie. Please tell me it performed better in your esteem this time.
It really did.
Oh, God, why do you say it like that?
I was letting you hang on it for a little bit there. My recollection of this was I really didn't like the characters, and I found it to just be kind of a tougher project to get through because I had to deal with these really unlikable characters for the duration of it. And I mean, Zero Mostel is a very angry man. He plays a very angry man through the film. Gene Wilder does a great job of being like a hysterical ninny. And, but yeah, I just never connected with them, and I always had a hard time. My Mel Brooks favorite is always Young Frankenstein, and Spaceballs is right up there. And then it's a steep drop for Mel Brooks quality for me. I find, I mean, I haven't seen all of them, but of the ones that I've seen, I find them much less appealing. And I'm one of those guys who's never been a big fan of Blazing Saddles either. But after rewatching this and finding so much joy in these characters, and I think I just needed a little more age in me to kind of connect with these characters more. I kind of actually want to go back and revisit some of the Mel Brooks movies that I didn't like as much and see if maybe I like them more now too. Because I thought this was just an absolutely fantastic film.
Andy, this is like we've just had spring awakening here.
You could say springtime for Hitler.
So what does this movie say about the time in which it was produced? Did you pull anything out of that? Why is it important and we should say, again, for those who are just joining us, I hope you know where we're coming from. But if you're new to the show, our overall arc, our master arc here is we're talking about films that are celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. So we're talking about the films of 1968 somehow in our series. And this one, I think we're kind of cheating. Is this really 68? Everywhere I see it,
really
it's 67.
Is 68.
It's
I
really
know.
68?
They do
Why
that
do they
because
do that?
it had an official premiere in Pittsburgh in 1967. Of which, according to Mel Brooks, it was him and some of the people from his team, some of the money men, and a bag lady. And the money men were so disappointed with it that they almost pulled it. And it was, well, I guess I could just tell. Now, there's an interesting story because Peter Sellers, he'd originally talked to Peter Sellers about playing the part of Leo Bloom, but then he never ended up hearing from Peter Sellers again. So he's like, well, I guess he's not interested. Weird circumstance. There's this random movie night that Peter Sellers was setting up with some friends, and where, they'd watch a movie and have dinner, and they would bring a meal that related to the movie, and so he did his night, and they would do it at this theater. And he did his night, and then this other director, and I'm going to forget who it was, had the next night, and he said, "Oh, I'll do this Italian movie, and I'll bring a meal and all this wonderful stuff, and it'll be a great time." And so they went to watch, and Peter Sellers was super excited about seeing this. It was a Fellini picture. And they get there, and he's like, I think it was like Vitelloni or one of those films. And he's like, well, let's put it on. And the guy's like, I didn't know I was supposed to bring it. I just assumed it was going to be here. And so Peter Sellers was like, what do you mean you don't have the movie? He's like, I didn't know. And so they call up to the booth, or the guy from the booth calls down. He's like, I've got this print of this movie, the producers, I'm not supposed to show it, but you guys can watch it if you want to. And so they watched it, and Peter Sellers loved it. He just fell completely in love with it. He called people in LA and told them about it. He wrote a letter, actually, that was printed in Variety, telling people how they had to go see this movie. It was just like the funniest movie he had ever seen. And so it kind of ended up creating a little buzz. It still didn't get another premiere until 1968, and in New York, where people kind of knew who Mel Brooks was, and that was a successful premiere, and then it finally was released. But I mean, that's kind of the story of how yes, technically it had a premiere in 1967, but
Okay.
thanks to Peter Sellers, we actually have the movie.
We'll stick with 1968 for our purposes. It is Mel Brooks' first direction, his first directed film, right?
Correct.
And it could have been the fine Gene Wilder's first film too. It was on the cusp of being Gene Wilder's first film until it took 3 years to get the money made. So I like to think of it as Gene Wilder's first spiritual, first film.
It may as well have been, because Bonnie and Clyde, I mean, it was the same year, or it was a year before, I guess, but his part was relatively small. So there wasn't much to it. So this was definitely his first leading role. And I think it's fair to say that he deserves the accolades for his performance.
Yeah. I am laughing from, the opening frame of this movie. First of all, they do a very strange thing on this thing. It's a very long opening credits run. Did you notice this? It's like 12 minutes long.
Well, I mean, yeah, with breaks.
Because they always have these breaks, and it's like this interminable cutting back to frames of names, but it's all done over zero Mostel. I'm gonna be generous here and call it producing. He's producing, and I'm saying that because I sort of want what he does to be what you do. Because I know that you are also a producer. I feel like those two things need to line up somehow. He's redefining the role, and so you have something new to aspire to.
Yes.
Hold me, touch me, Andy. Hold me, touch me.
Hold me, touch me. I love that she's actually credited as Hold Me, Touch Me.
Hold me, touch me. Yeah.
No, these guys are really terrible producers. First of all, like the rates that they're giving their investors, it's insane. Like 25%, 20%, 50%, 100%. Who does that? And so it has up to 25,000% of the profits. I mean, it's
that's what they call fraud. Yeah.
He's a bad producer. But even before he met Leo, he was just a bad producer. Oh.
Yes, he was a bad producer all the way out. And that ends up being one of the delightfully funny sort of jokes at the end, too, when they're actually in prison and he's still defrauding the prisoners for their own production. You now own 25%. 25%. The warden, he owns 50%. I thought that was really great. So, okay.
Good.
You said it. These are despicable characters, and yet we fall in love with them very quickly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from the casting. Finding Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder to play these characters makes characters that you can find a connection to a lot easier. I mean, they had both been Zero Mostel had been a familiar face to people. He had already been around and was popular. And I mean, he had been doing everything from it's a little more comic, but serious, like Fiddler on the Roof, playing Tevye. And he did A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, which is, that is like the one other role that I definitely remember him from. It's like I was trying to think of films that I had seen him in, and I feel like those, this and that, may be the only two. Oh, and he was in The Hot Rock, of course.
Mhm.
And just a few other. I mean, he was in plenty of other things, but a few others that I'd seen, but not much. But he's a real cranky bastard in this, and but there's something about the way he plays it, that sleaze, that I end up finding a real interesting warmth to, and I found that really interesting. And I think a lot of that also comes from the relationship that he develops with Leo as he meets Leo, and especially in the moment when Leo goes into hysterics and has that just wildly awesome fit, which was just brilliant. And when Zero has to sit down at the desk and he has to like smile, and
Yes. Yeah.
it's like, oh, that helps. That really helps. Like that was just like comedy gold right there. Just the way
Yes.
that these two played off of each other was perfect.
Well, and they get away with some things because of the kind of comedy that this is, right? That I think are sort of, these rules are sort of limited to this kind of comedy. These characters, like, they don't change, right? There's no emotional growth over the course of this. This is just a straight up comic action beat movie. Where we don't necessarily learn that much about them that we care about. We're just, what we see in the beginning, in that opening scene when we meet them, we just get to experience them going through different scenarios through the course of this movie and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I feel like there might be a little growth in Leo's character over the course of the story. He kind of has the growth, is able to kind of stand up in court and speak. I thought that showed an interesting side of him that was nice to see. But yeah, I think for the most part, it is pretty much kind of a comedy setup type of film. And it certainly is something Mel Brooks really knows how to do. I think that's something that, here's a guy who, really kind of grew up in the industry as a kid. He was already working with the early TV shows, like Your Show of Shows with Buck Henry, and he and Buck Henry created Get Smart. And I think that he's just one of those guys that gets it as far as creating those comedy beats. And what I found interesting revisiting this film is it wasn't just the comedy beats, but there were some just small, as a first-time filmmaker, there were some like small, subtle camera things that he chose to do that I was like, that's actually a pretty creative way to shoot the scene. And
Like what? What's your, give me a highlight reel.
An example for me is when, and this is just the one that's coming to my mind, when they're in the bar and they have found out that the audience actually loves the play instead of hates the play. And you have Gene Wilder, who pulls his blanket out and starts caressing his blanket. And then you get this shot of Max Bialystock as he comes over to the jukebox. But the shot is low from through the jukebox glass, and you kind of see him as he kind of plants his face on the glass of the jukebox. And I was like, that's kind of a creative angle that he's doing there. It's kind of fun. It gives it variety. And that's something that I found throughout the film. For a first-time filmmaker, this is a guy who actually was okay with just doing, and they're not huge, they're not big, they're not like mind-bogglingly creative like Martin Scorsese or Paul Thomas Anderson or Edgar Wright playing with their cameras, but there were enough to kind of make me notice and go, this guy is a director. He's doing interesting things here.
And he does it in the use of comedy. I think he does it really exceptionally well. And I'm thinking about Hold Me, Touch Me in the very sort of first sequence. She comes in and he falls and lands on his little table, right? The living room table that he has there, and he crushes it. And then we have a long lingering shot right on him on the floor as he's sort of suffering, and she disappears. And we don't know where she went. And then we hear her voice. She's sort of cooing for him. And he turns over and gets on his knees and starts wagging his butt like a dog. And the next shot we cut to, we're over her, but we're really close, like right over her stomach. And this is a 90-year-old woman laying down, like prone on the desk. And as the camera pulls back and we see Zero or Max kind of wagging his way toward her, and then we have this reveal of this 90-year-old woman in this amazingly sexual position, waiting for him to take her on this desk. It's hard not to just to belly laugh at this stuff, and it's that combination of placement, use, and the characters that he's shooting that I think just make it really smart. I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely agree.
I'm so glad you turned around on this. So glad. We got a little bit of fourth wall breakage, but not much. It wasn't egregious.
No, and it's something that I think works well in comedy, and I think because of that, this is the type of film where I wouldn't say you expect to see it, but when it pops up, you're like, oh, okay, of course, it's a natural place to do it. And, I think it's just a little look when right after Leo's breakdown, where Max looks at the camera and goes, this guy needs to be locked up.
Right.
Something like that. And, it's a very simple thing, but I think that the beautiful act of that fourth wall breaking, which came from stage because, character could turn and talk to the audience, I think it allows for the humor, and it amps it up a little bit more. So I definitely appreciated that. And I don't know if it's fair to say that it's something from the era, because I feel like it's something that just really happens whenever filmmakers need it to happen.
There is this great shot, right again in that Hold Me Touch Me sequence after he's done with the dog, and the camera is really close on Zero, kind of in the left of the frame, and she's over his shoulder. Do you remember the shot that I'm talking about? It's very, very close. It reminds me of like Brazil. Like it's one of those like super wide, super close, almost kind of a surveillance look to it. And it's hard to describe what I'm imagining is going on, but she's behind him and there's something going on with her hands and he's doing something with his face, and it just doesn't look great. It looks, like she's doing something. And that's kind of always what's been in my mind, right? That there's something going on, and they're just great comic actors. And then I listened to the interview with Mel Brooks on this, talking specifically about Estelle Winwood, who played that character, and said that Zero would come to him and say, "You have to get her out of here. She keeps poking me in unmentionable places. She's just incorrigible," and that makes that whole opening sequence before we actually meet Leo so much the better for me. She was really a dirty old lady.
And I think that he said, they had been casting for like 70 to 75-year-old ladies. And she came in for the audition, but she was actually like 90.
Yeah, she lied about her age.
Yeah, but she still is very spry and does a great job. This sort of stuff. She is very fun. She's great in the role. And I loved having her like seeing her climb up on top of him on the couch. And this is a guy who he had injured his leg like a year before the production on a bus accident, and so he had a really bad leg that he covered really well. You'd never guess it.
Again, back on the style, though, before we get too far out of this, I think it would be, it feels very much like a staged production for most of this, right? We're either in the theater or we're in his studio or in the stairwell. There are a couple, but it feels very much like a staged kind of a thing. There's a kind of a deep proscenium look at it. And then we have these moments where they leave, they go outside, and it feels remarkably cinematic.
Well, and I know it was kind of a low-ish budget production, and they did film quite a bit of on stage, but they tried to get out onto the locations as much as they could, and it really does help, and it opens the picture up when they go to the park and they're walking around. That beautiful scene when they're at the fountain, when Leo commits to doing this crime with Max. Just all of those moments really add a lot to it. And even some of the stuff outside the theater is outside the theater, even if it still looks kind of stagey. But I think they managed to pull it off pretty well, keeping it looking nice. But then again, also that look kind of works for that 60s musical type of storytelling, because it was definitely a decade of musicals, and having this coming in the 60s, I think reflects that a little bit, that this is a decade of the musical, and here is this musical about Hitler, and it just kind of gives it that sense, but also gives you quite a bit of that 60s style and everything. You get some great 60s characters in here throughout. But yeah, the look of it, I think I attribute a lot of that to that 60s musical style, which obviously was popular at the time.
And then we have to talk a little bit about Ula.
Ula.
Ula is the one. We have the whole stable of old ladies. We'll call them his production partners, and then we have Ula, who is the secretary and played by Lee Meredith. And what's her name is ridiculous.
Ula Inga Hansen Benson Janssen Tellen Hallen Sveden Svansen Bloom.
See, I knew you would know.
So I'm assuming that she must have married Leo Bloom at some point.
She eventually married Leo Bloom, right?
Ula Inga Hansen Benson Janssen Tellen Helen Sveden Svansen Bloom.
So if there's anything that we're going to tie back to what feels very 60s to me about this, what dates this movie, it's going to be Ula Dance.
I was watching this, and it does date it a little bit, but it did make me ask, where does this whole stereotype of like this dingy Swedish blonde bombshell come from? And I don't think it came from this film. I feel like this film is playing up that stereotype. So it makes me wonder, where did that kind of idea come from? It was intriguing to me, even if I found it a little dated, but but it didn't bug me. Same thing with like the way that they play up the director and his roommate. I think that the gayness of those characters is in a way, it ended up just being kind of just part of the over the top nature of everything in the comedy.
I don't know where the stereotype comes from, but boy, it doesn't take long for you to sort of find it with a couple of quick Google searches, and the Swedish sort of cultural attitude. When you look at these, I'm on a Swedish Tourist Bureau blog right now, and all I did was search for Swedish sex stereotype, and that can be a dark path.
Yes.
So I took the light path, but all it says here is Swedes are generally sexually liberated. They're practical people, and this extends to sex. They see nothing wrong with having sex and are happy to openly say they really enjoy it. They switch partners with little guilt and see sex as a natural part of life. So stereotype, yes. Also true. So there we go. We've just learned everything we need to know about that, and maybe that's where Mel Brooks got his information. The blogs in 1968. Yeah,
yes, the 60s blogs. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting. I think it works. It all works in context of the comedy, and it plays into that. And I guess in the end, I'm okay with Ula. I'm okay with just all of the Franz Liebkind, with LSD, with Roger Debris and Carmen, because it all ends up, for me, falling into kind of the over the top nature of what Brooks is doing with the comedy here. Yeah,
to hear Brooks talk about it, well, maybe we should talk a little bit more about getting it made, but his statement on how he handles, because we haven't talked about the Franz yet, and how he handles dealing with Nazism in this story. It's all about taking this authoritarian regime, the Third Reich, and lampooning it, and he is very clear about his intentions here, about writing something that allows us to overtly laugh at and thereby take down any power that this overtly negative historical experience has in our lives. Like he is super intentional. This is not a thing that, where we talk about the movies that these filmmakers make and they're just sort of surprised that this message was in here. No, this is Mel Brooks is on the record that this is what he tries to do.
Well, and it's funny because at the time, a lot of people didn't see it that way. Like he really had to push that, and
that they didn't get the joke. They didn't get the joke.
But it makes me wonder if it was so close where it's like too soon type of thing,
Yeah, maybe.
And I think he was probably pushing the boundaries as far as the too soon element in society. Some people in society were saying, we're not ready for that. It was too fresh. Too many people died. We can't just turn it into a joke. And I can see it both ways. I think if it's that fresh, it can still hurt. But I definitely agree with Mel Brooks that this whole idea of if you just get up, I think here's a quote that I found. I was never crazy about Hitler. If you stand on a soapbox and trade rhetoric with a dictator, you never win. That's what they do so well. They seduce people. But if you ridicule them, bring them down with laughter, they can't win. You show how crazy they are.
Right.
And I 100% agree with that. But I mean, I can still get it though.
It wasn't in that passage, but the thing that stuck with me hearing him talk about it was the same sentiment to what you just read. And then he says, these people, when you go into a debate with the authoritarian, they were born to do that. Yeah. You will always lose because they were born to do what they do. You have to step away and right. take them down a notch by laughing at them.
Yeah.
And I thought that's again, really insightful for, and shows kind of his, whatever you think of the rest of his movies, right? He does have a general brilliance about, the incisiveness of his comedy, as broad as it is,
The original title was actually Springtime for Hitler, and he came up with that title as a joke earlier in his career. And then he had actually worked for a producer that was a lot like Max, and who would actually sleep with these older women to get the funding, and used the money to kind of create their lavish lifestyle while they made unsuccessful plays. And it became kind of the backstory. And he's like, one day I'm going to write this guy into a script. And sure enough, he did. Now, he started as a novel. He had a friend read it, and they're like, there's way too much dialogue. There's not enough story here. And so it's a play. And so then he started working on it as a play. And he had some friends who were in the play industry look at it, and they're like, you're changing the scenes way too many times. There's no way this can be a play. This is a movie script. And so he's like, okay. And so he kind of started shopping it around, trying to find someone to buy it, but nobody was interested because the title, Springtime for Hitler, was just something that they said was just tasteless. Although I think he said Universal said if he changed it to Springtime for Mussolini, then they'd be interested.
a lesser authoritarian.
Right. He finally ended up meeting with an old friend of his, Sidney Glazier, who really loved it and wanted to make it. And he ended up finding the funding, and it got the distribution through Joseph Levine. And but Levine is the one who actually said, we just can't release it when it's called Springtime for Hitler. You have to change the name. And so that's finally the impetus that Brooks needed to change it. And he named it The Producers, which he thought was hilarious because he's like, these guys are anything but producers. But and they're like, well, now you got to find a director. And he's like, well, I want to direct it. And Levine was like, I don't know, like, why would I hire you to direct it? You haven't directed anything before. And he's just like, look, I'm the writer. I know this from top to bottom. I've seen the entire thing in my head for years now because I wrote it. If you hire somebody else to do it, they're not going to see it. It's going to take longer. So by hiring me, you're actually going to be saving money because we'll get it done faster. And he bought the logic and hired him. And so that was how he got his first directing gig. Now, as far as casting it, he always wanted Zero Mostel in the lead. And so he tried to get to Mostel, but his agent wouldn't show it to him. And so he sent it to Mostel's wife, who loved it. And even though when Zero finally read it, he didn't like it at all, his wife pushed him to take it. So she ended up being the reason that we got Zero Mostel in it. And then Gene Wilder, the interesting thing with that is he was actually in a play with Mel Brooks's, at the time, it was still his girlfriend, Anne Bancroft. They were in a play together, and he was getting very frustrated because he had a smaller part, and it is a serious play, but everybody was always laughing at him. And he would talk to Mel in the back. He's just like, gosh, why is everyone laughing at me? And Mel would say, it's because you're a funny guy. You make people laugh. That's what you're born to do. And so after they reached out to Peter Sellers to play Leo, and that didn't happen, he remembered Gene, and he's like, I'll get in touch with him and cast him. So he brought him on board. And then from there, it was pretty straightforward. But the other interesting casting element was that he knew Dustin Hoffman, like they lived on the same street together. And actually, he cast Dustin Hoffman as Franz Liebkind. And Dustin, this, according to Mel Brooks, this was like the night before they were supposed to shoot. He said he heard pebbles on his window, and he went to his window and he opened it up, and it's Dustin. And he's like, Mel, I have to talk to you. And so Mel came down to the street, and Dustin said, I have to, you have to let me out of being in your movie because I have an audition tomorrow in LA for The Graduate. And and Mel was just like, well, but you're in the film. We start shooting tomorrow. And he's like, you have to let me do this. This is my chance. And he was, and plus, I mean, it starred Mel's, by this point they were married. So his wife, Anne Bancroft, and Mel was convinced that Dustin wouldn't get the part. So he's like, all right, fine, you can go audition. And then of course, Hoffman called that next day saying he got the part. And so then he had to scramble and get Kenneth Mars cast for the role.
Kenneth Mars is just fantastic.
Oh, he's so funny.
Believably nuts.
Yes.
Well, I can't picture Hoffman in the role. I just can't picture it.
No, Kenneth Mars is perfect for the role. And I guess he got it in his head that to really kind of stay in character, he needed to bring his outfit home every night, and he'd sleep in it, and he was in it like for the duration. And he said it was ripe by the time they got to the end. It was just a ripe outfit.
So gross.
But I guess it helped him stay in character. Whatever it takes.
Gross.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. There was a funny Wilder story meeting Zero because he'd never met Zero, and this delights me. The first time, Brooks comes to him, 3 years after they had initially approached him to take the part of Leo Bloom, and Wilder hearing nothing, door opens and there's Brooks, and he says, "You got it, but you got to come meet Zero. I can't just cast you. I mean, you got to meet Zero. He wants to have a say." So they go to meet Zero, and Wilder says, I put out my hand to shake his hand, and he comes to me, he pushes the hand out of the way, and he grabs me and kisses me and kissed me on the lips. And that was it. Like all the, any anxiety was just gone. I get that. That sounds like a Zero Mostel kind of a thing to do. I feel like I'm getting a picture of who this guy is. I just love it.
So funny.
Just love it.
So funny.
You didn't say anything about Dick Shawn.
As far as getting cast, you mean?
He was the one that he'd always had in his head.
I think he was the first pick.
Yeah.
And I think what he actually said to Mel was, he's like, I'll take it. I like the part, and I don't have any work right now. So sure.
It's good. It's good. All right. So who are we missing? Oh, then there's this whole other thing with Roger Debris and Carmen Gia.
Oh yes.
This whole other little thing is where the Bialystock and Bloom have to go sell it. They have to go get this director, Roger Debris, played by Christopher Hewitt, and his assistant, Carmen Gia, played by Andreas Voutsinas. And they are a very funny pair. What do you think? Too far? Comic gold?
It ends up fitting within the context of the story. Like I end up really enjoying it because I I think it amps up the comedy. And so, it's definitely quite a big gay character that Christopher Hewitt's playing, but it ends up being very funny when he comes out from behind that little dressing screen and he's completely decked out in a dress. And he's
a giant.
And he's
a
huge.
very large,
Hewitt
tall man.
Is a very big man. Yeah. And it just ends up being so funny. And he plays it so well. And I don't know, for me, what I loved so much is that's Mr. Belvedere right there. I cracked up so much when I saw him pop up in here. And, I had forgotten that he's in the Lavender Hill Mob.
Yes.
I think that he's great here, and it's a small part. He's only in like 3 scenes, right? When they interview him, when he's casting, and then at the end when he comes in and screams rape.
Weird.
That was a little weird. Yes.
Yeah, that was weird. I have to admit, like, I remembered the name, Mr. Belvedere. Obviously, I watched the show. It is of an era that I was like watching TV,
yes.
and yet I couldn't picture it. I couldn't picture Dubois, Christopher Hewitt, as Mr. Velvet, and now I'm looking at them practically side by side, and they look like different men. That is remarkable to me. Maybe the eyes are the same, but it's like his whole skull got wider.
Well, he's older. He's got the mustache, and it's different. But I loved Mr. Belvedere, and now it always perpetually reminds me of this really wacky, creepy Saturday Night Live sketch that Tom Hanks was in, where they go to the Mr. Belvedere fan club meeting. No, it was called The Guy Who Played Mr. Belvedere Fan Club.
I never saw it.
Oh, well, we need to see if we can find it in
the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. Because there's this really creepy bit where Phil Hartman plays, I don't know, he's just a really creepy guy, but he's just like, he wants to tear the skin to wear the skin, where the skin becomes the key or something like that. Just, okay.
What?
Yeah, it was really funny. So that anyway, we have to find that sketch and put it in the show notes because everybody should see it.
Okay. All right. I'll look for it.
Anyway, I love Christopher Hewitt, and I end up being okay with the character, even though some of it's a little over the top.
Yeah, it's made better when you see interviews with these guys who played the characters, and they love the characters. I mean, clearly they had a great time, especially Andreas Voutsinas, who said when he was playing the character, he thought he was going to have to finish the film and then leave the country. Like it was going to be just a horrible thing. But it turned out to be really quite brilliant.
Yes.
Fun to see Bill Hickey in here.
That's what I was going to say. We should mention that William Hickey is the drunk in the bar. And gosh, we've talked about him a couple times on the show, right?
Yeah. But where was that?
We talked about him in Pritzi's honor.
We did, and not yet about National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which we'll get to. Oh, we'll get to it. All right, so all of the people out of the way. Now we've got to talk about the musical numbers. And
tying into the musical number, we do have to. Speaking of actors, we do just need to mention that Mel Brooks has his own little cameo as the voice in the Springtime for Hitler song. He does a little uncredited cameo doing the line, "Don't be stupid, be a smarty, come and join the Nazi party," because he just didn't think the actor could ever hit the line right and never got it as big and broad and funny as he wanted. So he dubbed it. And what's great about that is it became almost its own gag, because then he also dubs it in every stage performance and in what we'll be talking about next week.
I love it so much. I love the fact that it ran on Broadway too, and that the actor just did it from what did it run from 2001 to 2007 or something? Right. And yes, and that was always Mel Brooks. What a legacy.
Absolutely.
Don't be stupid, be a smarty.
Come and join the Nazi party.
Oh, so good. So good. So what did you think of the big musical number? As a fan of, scores and music, I know this probably hit you in the feels.
It's brilliant. It really is brilliant. And what's funny about it is he told his composer, John Morris, I need you to write the biggest, like, craziest, most awful musical number that you can. And he also told his the choreographer to do that. Everybody, production design, this has to be the gaudiest, most awful production musical number that we've done. And I think it works really brilliantly. And it's just fantastic to see all the pieces come together, whether it's the pretzel outfits or the beer outfits, whatever it is that fits. It just makes so much sense, and it works so well in context of it. And I may as well throw this in here now, Pete, because you brought it up. So I'm going to blame you. I think this song is brilliant and one of the most memorable songs of films in 1968. And looking at the musical nominations for Best Song in the year.
We're doing this.
We're
doing this right now.
We're jumping into this. We don't have to do all the awards right now, but I am jumping into this because I need to discuss this with you, Pete.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, we talked about The Windmills of Your Mind winning for Best Song from the Thomas Crown Affair. Michel Legrand, Alan Bergman, and Marilyn Bergman. It's a nice song. It works really well. It's an earworm. It sticks in your head and it doesn't let go. And I really like it. I think it's a fun song. But we looked at the list of songs: Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, For Love of Ivy, which is a Quincy Jones song from the movie For Love of Ivy, and Funny Girl, and Star from the movie Star. I have now listened to all of these. I also listened to Buona Sera, Mrs. Campbell, which I mentioned was nominated for Best Song at the Golden Globes.
Okay.
I still, of these, I would pick Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. But why the hell is Springtime for Hitler not nominated? Because it is better than 3/5 of these songs.
Those.
Yeah. And it should have won. I really think that it set out to do something very specific for the movie, and it did a brilliant job doing it. And while I love Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and think there's something magical about what the Sherman Brothers did with that song, this song is doing so much more because it's also satirizing just the whole thing. And I just think it's a brilliant piece of musical writing. And I don't think people got that at the time, but I do think that they got it when it came to the musical.
I'm not going to argue the point with you because I think you're right. I think it's on the strength of the song. I wonder if it was bad timing culturally for a song like this to win.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it. There's no way that people were going to nominate a song called Springtime for Hitler. Right. I just don't think that would have happened. If, like the movie, they retitled it to be something else and then it just happened to be singing about Springtime for Hitler, maybe it would have been nominated. But the fact that it's called Springtime for Hitler, I don't think you want to have a song labeled on IMDb in 2018 that says Springtime for Hitler winner. You know?
Yeah.
I think people
it'd be hard to print that on the statue.
Right.
Yeah. But I do think you're right. And I think the gift of the comedy of the song is that it's cutting. It is so cutting. Its satire is so cutting, come on, Germans, go into your dance. And they do the goose step dance. I mean, it's just perfection for what it's trying to accomplish. And it's interesting because it's such a whole production inside of the film, the producers, right? Like the producers has its own sort of resonance. And then this inside of it and the way the audiences react to it, the way they all start to storm out and then come back in as soon as they meet LSD as Hitler has its own sort of meta narrative going on in here. And I really like it. I like the way I find it really moving, not just funny in how it works. And that there's this capitalist narrative at the end of it too, that they ended up being successful and thereby failed. Like they screw up at every turn. And I just I think the third act of this movie just really locks in place. Now the criticism that for those that I've watched the movie with, the criticism is when Franz comes back and with the gun and starts trying to shoot Bialystock and Bloom and goes on his little rampage. How did that hit you?
And it's a criticism because
again,
through modernized type of
yeah,
criticism.
Yeah. I think it's modernized criticism, but you can say the same thing obviously in the musical and the play. We'll talk about it again next week,
which I haven't seen yet. So
right.
I don't have a problem with it. I think that it makes sense for the character. I mean, he's kind of this crazy Nazi secretly living in New York City and trying to play normal. But I think he kind of hits this breaking point. And so I think it makes perfect sense. I don't have any problem with the fact that he kind of resorts to that.
For some reason, for me, I don't have a problem with it in this film either. And yet, it's been probably a year since I've watched the 2005. I'm eager to hear your stance on it. There's something about just the modern production value that I think makes it hits me differently in the remake.
Oh, interesting.
So it's I'm curious. In this one, I didn't have a problem with it, and in fact, I think he's the way they interject the comedy throughout. The handing of the gun, and he's the way he plays some of his distractions. It's like this sort of ADHD rampage. He's so into his own gestalt that they have a lot of really wonderful comic beats that to play in the sequence. It's really worth watching. I think that this is one of those films, those Mel Brooks films, that if I have any criticism of a Mel Brooks film, it's usually that the third act just deflates, and we already got all the jokes. And in The Producers, I don't have that criticism. I feel like I'm still laughing as the credits roll at the end.
Well, it's a taut film. I mean, it's only 90 minutes, barely. And it moves along at a rapid pace. And by the time we get to that third act and the show is over, I mean, I was a little worried. I'm like, okay, is it going to just completely fall apart here? But you move through it so quickly. Like all of the stuff when Fritz comes and tries to kill them, and then they blow up the theater, and then the whole courtroom scene, it went so fast that I never felt like it was bogging down.
Right.
And that's a credit to Brooks's writing and to the editing. I think that they streamlined this to just keep the comedy as tight as possible.
You want to jump into talking a little bit more about the sequels, remakes?
Well, as we've alluded to, this does get its chance finally to become a theater musical. Was this the first real big movie adaptation for a musical?
Well, I don't know the first, but Andy, if you start searching on this, I mean, Wikipedia alone has 200 musicals that were based originally on films, and you will be surprised. I guarantee you will be surprised when you look at this list. That's
a rabbit hole. I don't think
list.
I want to fall down.
We don't want to go down that road. We could find it, but my guess is the first one is going to be Two Hearts in Waltz Time. The film was in 1934, and the musical was. Yeah, I know. I see now. I thought I had that right handy. So, but anyway, I think that might be the one, but I'm not sure. So,
well, and so it's clearly a thing.
It's a thing. Oh, it's a thing.
This took full advantage of that, and it worked well for Mel because his career as a film director was certainly falling by the wayside. I think that his quality was steadily declining after Spaceballs. He did Life Stinks, Robin Hood Men in Tights, which some people love, and then Dracula Dead and Loving It, which I don't know if anybody loves. That was 95, and that was his last film that he directed. And it wasn't until this that really kind of all of a sudden turned into something in 2001 that it kind of put him on the map as this Broadway guy. And this musical opened April 19th, 2001, and it ran until April 22nd, 2007 on Broadway. 2,500 performances. Nominated for 15 Tonys, and it won 12 of them, only losing to itself, which is crazy. For 3 of the acting, because Matthew Broderick lost to Nathan Lane, and then 2 of the other featured actors lost to a third featured actor. So it is amazing. Yeah. It's amazing to me that it was received so well, and I think that goes to show that when Mel wrote this, I mean, obviously. It was received well enough. But it's something that grew in popularity, and it seems like he almost wrote it too early, because by the time it hit in 2001, it was just like people were ripe. The time was ripe for it. People weren't ripe. The time was ripe.
No, the time was ripe and right.
People were ready because the time was ripe.
You want to talk about other awards just for the film?
Yeah, the movie did get 3 wins and 5 other nominations. At the Oscars, Mel won Best Original Screenplay. He was really surprised, wasn't ready, didn't have a speech, because he was convinced he wasn't going to win, especially up against some of the films that he beat, like 2001, which I may disagree with it slightly still, even though I like this now. But Gene Wilder was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but he lost to Jack Albertson for the film The Subject Was Roses.
Never seen it.
And I haven't either, but Jack Albertson, he was in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Gene Wilder a few years later.
Yeah.
Over at the Golden Globes, Zero Mostel was nominated for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy, but he lost to Ron Moody in Oliver, which we'll be talking about in a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And Mel Brooks was nominated there for Best Original Screenplay, but he lost to Sterling Silliphant for Charlie. And then in 1996, the film was put on the National Film Registry. So it's a very popular film. Oh, and then I was going to say at the WGA, they nominated it for Best Written American Original Screenplay, which Brooks won for, and Best Written American Comedy was only nominated. It lost to The Odd Couple. So
what do you think about that, The Odd Couple?
You know, I saw that movie so long ago, I don't remember it well enough.
I probably don't either, but I my memory of it is it's in good company if it's competing against The Odd Couple straight across. I don't know. On any given day, I could say either one.
Yeah, I'd have to watch it again because I don't remember liking it, but I didn't remember liking this one either. So,
The Odd Couple, Andy, you practically. I'm sorry, you are The Odd Couple.
I am.
I don't know how you should. Maybe that's why you didn't like it. It cut a little too close to the bone.
So I am The Odd Couple. Are you saying I'm split personalities?
No, I'm saying you're definitely one of them.
Or are you one of the? Are you the other one?
I'm saying maybe we should put that movie on the show. We could find out. We could discern how to do at the box office.
Well, Mel managed to get a budget of $941,000 for his first film, which is about $6.8 million in today's dollars. The movie did have its dismal premiere, which I told you about, on November 22nd, 1967 in Pittsburgh. As I said, it took a while, but he finally convinced them to try again, and with that letter from Peter Sellers, March 68, they had the other premiere in New York. It was received better. It still, for some reason, took until November 10th, 1968, for it to actually be released to a wide audience. It was released opposite Monkey's Head. I don't know if you've ever seen that wackadoo movie, but that's when that came out. And The Shoes of the Fisherman, the movie that we talked about not knowing anything about. This movie went on to make $1.6 million or $11.5 million in today's dollars. That gives them the film an adjusted profit per finished minute of $54,000, which is a solid start for Brooks. What obviously worked better for him, however, is the longevity of the film and its story.
It is a great film and story. So glad that we visited this film. In particular, can't wait for next week. But for now, Andy, I think we should try to rank it.
Oh, I think it's time. You're right.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel and you'll see the list of movies that we have talked about on the show. If you swipe over in the show notes or you're listening on the website and you click the word Flickchart, it'll take you straight to this movie in the Flickchart catalog. You can add it to your own list and see how it stacks up to ours.
All right, first up, we have The Producers or Fat City. I will say The Producers.
I say The Producers. Top half.
The Producers or Raise the Red Lantern. I gotta go Raise the Red Lantern.
Okay, I'm gonna go The Producers and just roll with it. Let's just see what happens. All right,
here we go.
1, 2, 3. Paper.
Rock. All right.
Okay.
I feel okay with that.
All right.
All right, next up we have The Producers or Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Oh, I have to go Scott Pilgrim.
No, Scott Pilgrim.
All right, The Producers or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'm going with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. We need some Leone redemption.
Yeah, okay. Good, the Bad, you're right. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
The Producers or My Neighbor Totoro. I'd go with Totoro.
I'm going to go with the producers.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
One, two, three. Scissors. Paper. Scissors.
Paper. The producers takes it.
All right.
The producers, or All About Eve. I'm definitely going with All About Eve.
The producers.
Oh, snap.
No. I'll take it back. I will also go with All About Eve.
Okay. The producers, or The Philadelphia Story. I will go with The Philadelphia Story.
I'll definitely go with the producers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. No.
And it's even a definite.
One, two, three. Paper. Any questions?
The producers, or The Godfather Part 2. I'll say The Godfather Part 2.
I will also say The Godfather Part 2.
Well, that lands the producers at spot 80 on our chart. 80 out of 381 movies on our flick chart.
That's pretty good.
It's a pretty good spot. Higher than I would have put it, but you were kind of all, I'm in love with this movie. So
Shove it. Shove it. How did it do on your list, Prince Andrew?
Well, Pete, as you know, I didn't like this movie initially. My initial ranking of this movie was at spot 3021 out of 4060. So it was pretty far down my ranking.
That's ridiculous.
And I was like, I'm going to be fair, now that I've rewatched it and I enjoyed it, I'm going to re-rank it. Because one should.
Yes.
And so it came in at 947. And that lands it at a 77%, which is a pretty healthy jump, I would say.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Big shot. I ended up with mine at 297 out of 1051, which is a 72, a mere 72.
Wow.
Yes. You have
and I think that you still liked it more than me. So that's funny.
I did. And so if I'm to go by the algorithm for letterboxd.com/thenextreel, the star rating that Flickchart says I should use is 3.5 stars. I find that a tragedy. I will not be going with 3.5 stars. I will be going with more of the stars. I know it's a heart, so we're going to lock that in. But is it a 5-star heart or a 4.5-star heart? That's the real question.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Which is it? You tell me. I can't tell you which star it is for you.
I feel like you often do. And so... but I believe that I'm going to go with in terms of comedy experience, this is top class for me.
So I feel like you're saying it's 5-star for you.
Ugh.
Do you have quibbles?
I have some quibbles. But see, the way quibbles work in your universe, they're quibbles that you throw away. It doesn't matter. It should be 5-star with 1,000 quibbles.
I'm
going to give it a 5-star, Annie. It's a 5-star and a heart.
Don't be afraid of that.
I'm a little afraid of it. I'm timid.
I can tell you are.
I'm hysterical.
If you're timid
I'm wet and I'm hysterical. And I'm
in pain.
I'm wet and I'm hysterical.
I'm at 4 stars. 4 stars and a like, which I'm really happy with because I probably would have said it was 1.5 before. But now 4 and a like, and I feel really good about that.
Well, here's the other thing. That my other 5-star heart Mel Brooks movie is Young Frankenstein, and I am like you. I'm very interested in going back to my other experiences with Mel Brooks movies because I have not seen enough of them. I've seen Blazing Saddles, didn't date well. That's hard to watch now. Young Frankenstein.
I thought that one was supposed to be easier to watch now.
I just wasn't as funny to me. I just didn't. I wanted it to be much funnier than it was. There are bits. Young Frankenstein absolutely holds up for me. Silent Movie I've only seen once. I hardly remember what it was about. High Anxiety, same thing. History of the World Part 1 is the one I'm most eager to watch again because that's the one that I feel like is that could be my other 5-star and a heart. And I know. I feel like Spaceballs, Life Stinks, Robin Hood, Dracula. For me, those are in the same category. I know Spaceballs is high and mighty for you, but it's always been kind of She doesn't look Drewish.
Schwartz. They've gone plaid.
It's funny right now. It's less funny in the movie when that happens.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's great. He's got a wide variety, for sure. And I too, I'm curious about revisiting his work, and maybe I'll put him on my list when I finally finish going through Robert Redford's catalog. Maybe I'll look at Mel Brooks, because it's not quite as lengthy.
Did you ever see 12 Chairs?
Yep.
I've never seen the 12 Chairs.
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it. But Frank Langella is in it as a comedic role.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that great of a movie, but maybe I'll like it more now. Who knows?
You're a real confusing guy.
Well, if you want to hear more of us, but you can't wait until next week's show, you can support us over at patreon.com/thenextreel and get access to our exclusive members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee.
We talk about movie news and new trailers, plus we go head-to-head in our weekly challenge in which we put together lists of movies related in some way to the movie we're discussing that week.
There are all sorts of other goodies, too, if you support us at different levels. Just head on over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
You can learn more about us and check out the detailed show notes at thenextreel.com.
You can subscribe for free in your favorite podcast app and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at The Next Reel.
And if you want to get into the conversation yourself, join our Discord channel for a whole lot of movie chat with movie lovers from around the world. You can find the link to join in the show notes or on the website.
The Next Reel couldn't happen without the hard work of Stephen Smart running Instagram,
Ben Lott, who runs all things Twitter,
and thanks to Eli Catlin, who graciously allows us to use his song Ragtime Instrumental as the theme to the show. You can find out more about Eli on his SoundCloud page.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Yeah. Divisive is what the Amazon brought with us today. We went, of course, because we like this film. We scraped the bottom of the barrel. I picked one that's not funny, but actually quite astute, if I may. Then you have to say, you may.
Please, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. We should really start scripting this show. This is a 1-star, it says, yuck from a customer, Amazon customer. Another terrible script saved by Gene Wilder's sweet performance. The same can't light a match scene is here, and that scene is also in Stir Crazy, and also in Blazing Saddles. Not that funny of a scene. The court scene is totally not believable, and the ending is really lame. They made a Broadway play out of this?
Wow.
Now that can't light a match thing.
Yeah.
That's true. Why we didn't say anything about that. That is a scene that has appeared. That's been a thing.
I guess I didn't say anything because I didn't know it was a thing. But
well,
now I do.
And now you do.
It took Amazon comments for me to learn that.
Well, they're very insightful. For that, Andy, I'm going to mark this one as helpful.
I like that you did that.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think I'm going to be marking mine helpful, Pete.
Okay.
Probably not. Mine is by Edward Lawrence from 2014, who gave it 1 star and said, El Stinko to the max. El Stinko acting from 2 of the best. There is no excuse except for horrible direction.
Oh, Edward.
El Stinko to the max, Pete.
He was a kid. That
El
is
Stinko to the
decidedly
max.
not helpful to the max. Thanks, Amazon. It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great movies, so many great conversations. But it's a lot of work. Producing this show week after week does require a lot behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We had some great films in Season 8 that started their lives as books or plays, and you can find all of them on our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals.
That's the site where listeners can find links to purchase all the source material behind the adapted films we covered. from season 1 up through our current season.
For part of season 8, we had a series celebrating the 50th anniversary of films from 1968.
We talked about 2001 and 2010 for our Odyssey series, both adapted from Arthur C. Clarke's novels. Man, the second one was so much better than the first, right?
Don't you even get me started. Need I bring up Under the Cherry Moon again?
Yes, also so much better.
Wait, no, that's not what I...
Planet of the Apes kicked off its series based on the novel by Pierre Boulet.
We covered Danger Diabolic and The Detective, adapted from novels for our 1968 crime films.
Wait, wasn't that The Detective the prequel to Die Hard?
They were both written by Roderick Thorpe, and yes, it's the same character in the books.
I can't believe they even asked Sinatra if he'd be in Die Hard. That would have been weird.
Once Upon a Time in America was part of our Leone Once Upon a Time trilogy, adapted from Harry Gray's novel.
And we looked at 1968 Best Picture nominees The Lion in Winter, Rachel, Romeo and Juliet, and Oliver!
We also had an Ingrid Bergman series with adaptations like Spellbound, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Murder on the Orient Express, and Gaslight.
We haven't talked about Gaslight.
Stop gaslighting me!
Dive deeper into these books and more adapted films at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations that we've covered on all the Next Reel family of podcasts, and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.